Welcome to Unfurled TV. I'm your host, Tom Clark. Recently, I don't know, a few days ago, Scott Adams put out a video entitled Q, Racism, LeBron, and Slow News August. Now, I happen to think that Mr. Adams is a very intelligent man, offers a fascinating perspective about the world that we reside in. But I do think that he's not above criticism, just like anybody else. We all make mistakes and get misguided from time to time. I think he's well worth watching. I watch him at least a couple times a week. I just think we should be always be skeptical of people that we find intriguing, because we start getting into too much groupthink. Please, Tom, quit saying so much. My apologies, folks. If you go back to his show, and we will play some clips of it, but if you go back to his show, he starts out by going on at some length about Q not being what Q is purported to be by his followers. And I believe that to be true myself. I think Q, just like anybody else, is going to be right part of the time in predicting the future. I think Q's predictions are often vague and can be interpreted in a bunch of ways. But from what I've seen, Q predicting, big events happening, really big events happening, like a lot of people that are corrupt getting locked up. We haven't seen that, so I'm very skeptical of it. The issue that I have with Mr. Adams is that he's said on many occasions that people's opinions are based on beliefs rather than facts. I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure there, but that's the general gist of what I take away from his videos. And, he claims himself to be a master of persuasion, and that has to do more about belief than with facts. And anyway, that seems to come up quite a bit. Here, in the case of this video that I'm criticizing of Mr. Adams, he goes on quite a bit about Q not being true, as if that matters. I mean, in Scott, I'm trying to mimic Scott's attitude towards things, as if not being true matters. In Scott's worldview, let me know if I'm wrong. In Scott's worldview, all that matters is whether you get more people to your side of the argument, by persuasion. I think it's rather hypocritical of Mr. Adams to, suggest that there's something wrong with supporting or pushing forward something that's not true. That doesn't seem to be a principle of yours. Again, basically with Mr. Adams, when you're trying to persuade somebody, facts be damned, which is weird and hypocritical. He tries to sway our opinions based on facts. A lot of the time he's using facts and trying to sway our opinions with facts, and then facts don't matter. So facts don't matter when it's convenient for them not to matter, and they do matter when it's convenient for them to matter for your argument, I guess. I don't know. I agree that when you're trying to persuade people, that facts may not be the all or end all of persuasion, but they do at least persuade some of the people some of the time. Personally, I never want to put out a false fact. I never want to mislead anybody. And if I, could command the world's attention, I would be able, I'd hold them to a conversation until all sides of the topic have been fully explored. But for the sake of time, things do get edited out. But my main point with regard to facts is that they are important. They're very important. And I think in the walkaway movement, it's just comprised of folks that realize that they were being lied to, and the media and the education system had been behind this. And I think that goes a long ways to showing that Mr. Adams' thinking is flawed. If you're principled, stick to the facts and then add persuasion on top of facts. That's good. I think it's good to point out the tactics that the other side the other side uses that are not factual based is important. It helps people understand what's going on. I think that's all good and well, but for yourself, for your own integrity, for people to trust you, I think you should stick with facts. You should always be fact-based and argue from there. Use persuasion on top of facts. Anyway, I got some clips we're going to go through, and this is the first one.
So, if you want to believe in Q and it's fun and you like consuming it, I'm not going to tell you not to. I mean, it's your life. You can find entertainment in any legal way you would like. But if you want to make Trump supporters, let me say this in a more personal way. The Q people make me look like an idiot just because, I say good things about the president, and that kind of, in most people's minds, that puts me on the same team as the Q people. I don't like that. I don't like being on the Q team. So do what you want to do, guys. Go wild, but maybe do it a little quieter, because it's not helping the brand. The brand is definitely taking a hit with the Q stuff.
No. Please, Mr. Adams, aren't you being a tad narcissistic here and hypocritical? I mean, is this all about you and your embarrassment? I mean, it just, oh well. That just rubs me the wrong way if I have to be honest about it. So if facts don't matter and perception is the gold standard, then why does it matter to Mr. Adams that Q is true or not? I think Mr. Adams' argument should be based solely, and he does it here in part, but solely based on the fact, does preaching about Q dupe more people onto your side of the aisle, or does it put more people off? That should be the only analysis if you're not going to be a person that's based in facts and argues from facts. And if you think that the people are malleable without facts or misleading facts, that doesn't excuse your behavior. That might be true. A lot of people are. But that doesn't preclude you from acting in an ethical and moral way to your subscribers, to your viewers. Again, I don't think Q is true. I don't think it should be preached as the gospel. But I say that upon that I don't think it can be shown as true. That's my basis. I'm not worried about whether, it moves so-and-so to my side of the aisle or not my side of the aisle. I'm not worried about that. First, I want to discern what is true. And then once I've discerned what is true, and then I can start, making my rhetorical case for it. And Mr. Adams, it's very strange that you think the actions of others reflect upon you. That's weird. People that believe in Q are no reflection upon you if you don't believe in Q. I don't know where you get that. All you have to say is, I don't believe in Q. If you want to convince people that Q's not true, what kind of manipulative argument is it to say, you make me look bad, so you shouldn't believe in Q? That's not a good argument. It's not even a logical argument. It's redonkulous, actually. So, but we'll apply the same standard to you going here shortly. So, you infer that acting the fool is bad for a supporter of the president because it harms the president. The same applies to you. Somebody that supports you believes in something that's stupid, makes you look bad. Yet, you don't apply that standard to yourself. and let's take a look at what I think makes you look like a fool.
Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum. Oh, bum, 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 bum. Hey, everybody. Come on in here. You know, yesterday I was so excited to tell you about my visit with the president that I forgot to do the simultaneous sip. Did anybody notice? I'll bet you did. But I'm not going to forget today. Today I'm on the ball, despite not having enough coffee yet. You've been begging me to talk about Q, and so I will. And shall we drink to the simultaneous sip? Join me.
Hey, it's a free country. You can be as weird as you want to be. That's fine. People may get a kick out of it. But in my view, this is just a grown man, acting like a fool. And let's take a simultaneous sip, join me. I mean, you could not sound more cultish-like. Therefore, you make your followers look like cultists, that you're leading a cult, and that cult supports the President of the United States. From somebody that's on the, the president's side, because I don't believe everything that Mr. Trump believes in, but he is anti-globalist, and that's the number one thing that I want from a politician at this point in history. So I am supporting the president. I like his Supreme Court picks, things like that. A lot of good things going on with the president, and I don't want you, Scott Adams, acting like a fool, and the left looking at you, calling you and your supporters a bunch of Kool-Aid sipping cultists. But it's a free country, do what you want. The thing that bothers me, though, is, I feel that way and about this part of your show, and you turn around, and when somebody else acts like a fool, in your mind, is acting like a fool and could potentially harm the aesthetic look of the presidency, then, let's take jabs at them, but you don't take a jab at yourself. So, it is what it is. I just think that, either cut this nonsense out or cut out going after people that, are a little bit quirky. Either support them in their quirkiness or quit being quirky yourself. Just a little consistency, sir. That's all I'm asking for. All right. Of course, I have 2 subscribers. I don't know, Scott's probably got millions. So, nobody's listening to me about this. I'm under no delusion about that. But it doesn't change my thinking on it. He is acting foolish and turns around and then tells others not to act foolish. Come on, please.
All right, let's talk about your favorite topic that gets people to leave all the time.
See how that works? He made me drink coffee. Son of a bitch.
Some of you saw I talked to my buddy Hawk Newsom, who's doing a love march right now. Not a Black Lives Matter march, but a march for love, the Agape March. And I talked to him yesterday afternoon on Periscope. Now, he said a couple of provocative things which require some comment. He said the following. Number one, he said that there are a large number of racists who are Republican Trump supporters. And many people pushed back and said, no, don't call us racists.
Okay, first of all, I may have the text quotes a little wrong here because I use Google Translate to do this, and sometimes it doesn't get them right, and sometimes I don't quite hear them right. Sometimes I leave out the ums and ahs and stuff like that. So, if you want to know exactly what he says, go to his video, go to this video clip, listen to that. But this is generally what he said in the text here. But he said, the people that are basically critical of Mr. Newman are saying, no, don't call us racist. As well they should. Now, I don't have all the facts here, as I don't follow Mr. Newsom, or I haven't even followed this controversy, honestly. However, the case that Mr. Adams is making reeks of the same problem we have with CNN fake news, and that's fake news by omission, or fake news by not fairly treating both sides of the issue, when you know both sides of the issue. I seem to recall Mr. Adams saying at times that, CNN fakes the news by only giving half-truths or partial facts through a particular lens, this sort of stuff, which I think most of us agree with. But Mr. Newsom and Mr. Adams, you are practicing the same tactic, okay? What you may have is a partial fact, but it doesn't show the whole picture, and you're using that partial fact to denigrate a whole group, a whole community. That's fake news. So I'm begging you to not practice this. Again, the question isn't whether a quote is technically true within the quote. It matters in context, taking the whole conversation that was stated, kind of analyzing and seeing if it leaves out a very, very critical part of the story. All right? So if Mr. Newsom says that there's a large number of racists within the Republican Party, don't you think it's kind of a little bit a critical piece of information to say that it's only a small percentage of the Republican Party, and probably the Democratic Party has just as many, if not more, racists within their party? Don't you think that's kind of a critical fact that shouldn't be omitted? I do. And if you do omit those facts, I think it's fair to criticize you and ask for clarification.
Well, I think you have to look at exactly what he said.
Yes, we do have to look at exactly what he said, but that doesn't stop our analysis of what's going on. Look at what he said, understand exactly what he said, but that doesn't end the analysis.
Exactly what he said is that there are a large number of them, not a large percentage. He didn't say that. He said there are a large number of them. Is that false?
Technically, no. Persuasionally, yes. Mr. Adams, you're in the business of calling out others who are not, I'll loosely call them your friends, or allies, or whatever you want to call them, people on the opposite side of the political spectrum. You're often criticizing them for being basically unthoughtful and not covering the wider context. And that's exactly what Mr. Newsom has done. Well, I should say that's exactly what he's done. He's either done that or he's hiding the fact that he actually really believes that the Republicans are just inundated with racists. I mean, it seems to be one of those two. But this is exactly what you're practicing. You are being unthoughtful and not covering the wider context of what's going on here. You're not covering the perception of the issue. All you're doing is defending your crony.
So it's not a fact.
Look, it's just not learned for Mr. Newsom to have had that narrow of a focus when you're talking about race. Race is a very divisive issue, and it should be handled very carefully and very thoughtfully. You know, if you don't like that criticism, I don't really care. It's valid criticism. Look, I don't see myself as being particularly genius here, and especially in my criticism of what you're doing. And my hope is that anything that I say that is not well thought out, somebody will correct that. You know, I would like to be smart and never make a mistake, but that just doesn't happen. So if anybody can correct my mistakes or, you know, help flesh out my thoughts, I welcome that. And I think that Mr. Adams and Mr. Newsom, you guys should be doing the exact same thing. If somebody, you know, catches you in your faulty or, you know, less than optimal thinking, you should welcome that. Not try to denigrate them or argue against them. You should accept them. You should accept that criticism, take it on board, acknowledge it, and completely cover the subject in a cooperative manner as much as possible, and actually disagree where you actually disagree. You know, that's the case that I'm trying to make.
You know, it's not really a fact that I think you can doubt, that there are a large number. Now, your real, and I think the valid criticism of that statement, is that it sort of leaves in the air that maybe it's most of them.
Yeah, it does. You are acknowledging the argument, and then you just basically ignore that argument. Isn't that the crux of the issue? And Mr. Newsom and you should work together to get this misconception out of the air. If you truly don't believe that most Republicans are racist, shouldn't you and Mr. Newsom work together to clear that conception up? Nope. That's not what we see. We see here misdirection, as far as I'm concerned anyway. And like I said before, all you have to do is say, like, oh yeah, you know, that's true. I wish I had said what you guys are saying. You know, indeed, most Republicans are not racist. I was just pointing out that there are quite a few that are. And you guys were totally right to call me out on that. Something like that. It's not difficult. It's in no way difficult to admit something like that. And, you know, bring on people onto your side, unless you're trying to walk the fence between two communities. So say he's trying to walk the fence between, you know, being a charlatan, basically, a panderer. You know, I'm going to pander to the black community. I'm going to pander to the Republican community. So I'm going to be wishy-washy about all of this. I mean, so I don't know what's going through his head. I don't know what's going through your head. But look, if you don't have an agenda to hide, it's just a piece of cake to take upon criticism and incorporate that criticism into your statement and say, yes, that's right. You guys, I'm glad you pointed that out. What's the problem with that? Just baffles me.
And when he was asked to clarify, I saw on Twitter, some people who watched that Periscope asked him to clarify, and then he said the following, but listen to the exact words.
Again, I'm perfectly fine with listening to his exact words, but that is not the end of the analysis. The wider context, the misconceptions that arise from what he said, the misrepresentation by omission of what he said, that is the wider context, and you and Mr. Newsom should accept it and quit dodging this. It's ridiculous.
He said that that people, talking not about himself now, black people, sort of the general group, believe that most Republicans are racists. Is that true? Now remember, that's not a claim of fact. Well, it's a claim of fact about what people believe. It's not a claim of fact about what people are. I would say that's also probably true.
So, again, this is just a terrible, terrible way to frame the criticism of Mr. Newsom. It's just awful. If he wasn't talking for himself when he made the earlier statement, he just sort of he shouldn't have hid it behind the black community, you know. He should say, well, and leave it ambiguous like that. He should not be using his black community as a shield for this talk. He should separate himself if the larger black community thinks this, or a large proportion of the black community thinks this, and say, hey, I don't believe this. I know this is nonsense, but a large portion of the black community does believe this, in my opinion, and it's an issue that the Republicans need to deal with, and the president needs to deal with. They need to, somehow reach across the aisle or debunk or derail the Democrats' hold on the black community, whatever it is. But from what it says, it's still just wishy-washy, mealy-mouthed. Nobody's clear where Mr. Newsom still stands. And we got somebody that's an apologist for the wishy-washy, mealy-mouthed garbage coming out and defending this. Come on. Just quit the nonsense. Say what you say, or mean what you say. Just quit the nonsense and clarify this up. It's a piece of cake. I don't understand the problem. Now, for what it's worth, I will continue to watch Mr. Adams a couple times a week. I get all excited, but I think he's he's very articulate, really has really good thought-provoking content. Now, I don't watch him every day, but I watch him a couple times a week. And I also need to be fair that, I'm not pointing towards Mr. Adams' content that I agree with. I'm only pointing you towards, for the sake of time, pointing you towards content that I disagree with. I mean, he makes a good case for the stuff I agree with. I don't need to jump on that bandwagon, but when I disagree with him, I think it's more important to stand up. So I'm not trying to attack their character here, folks. I'm just pointing out the problems I see in Mr. Adams' channel and how sometimes things are being presented. It's not always that way, but there are issues that I think that, maybe the walkaway movement should be aware of when they start looking for alternative sources of information. Always be skeptical of information, no matter the source, no matter how much you trust the person. Always reserve some doubt. Anyway, that's all I have, folks. And as always, please correct me if I'm wrong. Take care now.